Joining me now is Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Ryan Costello, who questioned Pruitt today. Congressman Costello, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Chuck.
So I picked out those two excerpts because I guess I want to ask a larger question here. Do you think the EPA administrator is, to go to that question that Congresswoman Eshoo asked, is he remorseful for what he did or remorseful that he's gotten caught?
I wouldn't use the word at all, Chuck. I don't think he satisfactorily addressed the spending questions. And when you have someone like Senator Inhofe even say that he would like to have Administrator Pruitt appear before the Senate, I think it's an indication that the issue is spending issues have not been resolved.
You were pretty direct with him today. I want to play a clip of it. I'm going to play it and ask you a question on the other side.
I believe you've demonstrated, or you've not demonstrated, the requisite degree of good judgment required of an appointed executive branch official on some of these spending items.
Is that a fireable offense as far as you're concerned? Do you think that in your words, not demonstrating the requisite degree of good judgment on those items, is that grounds for dismissal or resignation?
Well, I did try and be diplomatic with it, but I do think it's still a serious issue that he hasn't answered the question to. I want to see his answers to some of the questions at the appropriations hearing this afternoon. As you may have reported, he's appearing before two committees today in the House, and I want to see him appear before the Senate as well. The questions haven't been answered, and some of the spending that has occurred, I don't think is appropriate, and I don't think that he's either blamed it on other people or he's not adequately addressed it. I also think that there's some legitimate questions about those who've raised issues in the IG's office or others in the department who've been reassigned or demoted. So the issue has not resolved itself, to be sure. I have not called for resignation at the moment, but it is something that I look at, and I do ask myself that question. I just haven't landed there just yet.
For what it's worth, you were an outlier among fellow Republicans today on that hearing. Why is that?
Well, look, let me just turn the page. I am a Republican. I think that I disagree with some of the things he's done. I don't think we should have rolled back vehicle emission standards. I take issue with the hemming and hawing over whether we should regulate carbon dioxide. I think that we should. I do believe that human activity is the leading cause of climate change. But having said all that, if you ask any Republican 4 years ago to look at an Obama-era agency and rail against it, EPA would be at the top of the list. So he has done some things that a lot of Republicans feel are very, very good, and I think a lot of Republicans at the hearing wanted to highlight some regulatory relief measures that he has instituted, and he should. That's their right to do that. I don't take issue with that. At the same point in time, I think there were some Democrats who spent too much time just railing against him and not probing with acuity for some answers there.
Look, you're getting at what I think is the major credibility problem of Congress right now. You know, essentially, it feels as if people only get outraged when somebody from the opposite party commits ethics violations.
I think that there's some truth to that.
And to me, Scott Pruitt's been a classic example here. Why is it that seems to, I mean, are we just that polarized? Is it just that fearful? If you at all criticize a member of your own party, the president's going to lash out at you? What is the fear factor?
Let me say this. I'll give you an example. I think that a lot of Republican members look at the policies. I'll give you waters of the U.S., which the EPA is actively involved in, which I think the Obama administration went way too far. And a lot of members look at this and say he's doing the right thing policy-wise. And I think that they're waiting for better answers, or at least they want to find an answer that's satisfactory. But again, I don't think he's in the clear yet. I don't think that he has abdicated or absolved himself of some of the spending that has happened. So I think that there's still some senators who are taking issue with things here. So again, your point's well taken, but he's not in the clear yet.
Yeah, I want to ask you about another double standard, and it seems to be with the president. Tom Price, you know, he was fired. David Shulkin, he was fired, essentially for bad spending, okay, for irresponsible spending habits. It looks like both of them pale in comparison to the number of issues with Scott Pruitt. So there's where it does. It's not clear what the ethical lines are in this administration.
I agree.
Some people cross them and you get fired, and some people cross them and you don't.
Well, you know as well as I do that the White House has not leaned in to defend the administrator for these hearings. And so I think the jury is still out in terms of what the White House will or won't do, right? And I think that reports
Sunday,
that the president...
for what it's worth, Mark Short, you know him well, chief congressional liaison on Sunday, he said to me on Meet the Press that the president stands by Scott Pruitt, thinks he's doing a great job.
Well, look, I think that I don't want to speak for the president. I don't do that. But I think the president reportedly has been very pleased with the fact that he's been very aggressive in rolling back some things. So, look, you can like what someone is doing substantively,
right,
but at a certain point in time in our oversight capacity, we have to look at the ethics of the situation. And look, if a Democrat had done this, I think you probably would have seen some shifts today in terms of who was asking what questions or saying what things.
Sadly, you're absolutely right, and I think a lot of people watching today would say that's what we saw the last 6 to 8 years sometimes. Anyway, Congressman Ryan Costello, now running for re-election. You're speaking a little more truth to power. Is it easier?
I think I get booked more, Chuck. I was always willing to speak truth to power, but now that I'm not running for re-election, I think you guys like to book me more. So.
All right, touche, Congressman Ryan Costello.